We're here to educate on education, whether we're qualified to or not. It's ironic because we're here to inform you about the problems with our education system today. We're going to tell you about ideas worth spreading.
So there are several issues within our nation, within our education system, and those issues extend from our local governments, from our Board of Educations, all the way up to our federal government. Now these problems are unhealthy and they cannot be sustained. I'm Dan Fulp, I'm an educational reformist, I'm progressive.
I am as well. However, our beliefs on the solutions to this problem differ. But we both agree on one thing. Our education system needs reform.
Yeah, now we'll proceed to inform you about our personal beliefs on how we should reform the system. And we differ, so we're going to let you decide what you think is best.
With luck, you'll hopefully decide on one belief or come up with your own solutions to solve this problem.
Now, the majority of our unequal, deprived education systems have one thing in common, and that is that they occur in cities. These cities are LA, Detroit, New York, Philadelphia, and that is not okay. Now, the reason this occurs is these areas don't have money. There is indisputable evidence, whether or not you believe that the reason that these individuals, these kids who are going to school, aren't succeeding is because they don't want to learn or because of their cultural background or racial background. There's indisputable evidence to say that the areas that aren't succeeding are the areas that have the greatest low-income students and the least amount of money within their system. Those are those areas. Now, education is so deeply rooted in the economy that we cannot improve without adding more money to these school districts.
Speaking of deep roots, this problem is going on for a long time and is accumulating over time to be a really serious issue. As shown by the graph, you can see that throughout the generations, parents in these states, New York being our own, aren't graduating or don't have degrees from college. Over time, this snowballs so that their children won't have educations or won't go to college, and they don't feel it necessary to get this beneficial education.
Now in Philadelphia, the spending per student is around $9,300 with a 71% of low income. Now in a district right outside of Philadelphia, Lower Merion, that's about $17,000 with a 4%. So in 20 times the great amount of low income students, we see nearly half the spending per student. Now in New York, where it's about $11,000 per student, and in the neighboring areas in Long Island, Jericho, Manhasset, Great Neck, we see that there's about $22,000 spending on students, where in the cities, 80% are low income. So we see that there's a major issue and that there's a direct correlation here within this funding.
The problem with this is that students just become a number. You see these wide classrooms, sometimes even auditoriums, only separated by a single chalkboard or a paper-thin wall, where students are learning about different things in different classrooms but can hear over one another. They're not getting the full educational experience, and there's no way possible for them to do so. It's too crowded, and these teachers aren't always qualified to be teaching. Many of them don't have teaching certificates or the proper knowledge to be teaching in their respected subjects.
So one thing that's occurring right now is that, how is a student supposed to be able to learn history when a teacher right next to him is teaching him science? Now the public schools have a limit in New York to 30 students per class, but some legislators are saying, let's get rid of that. Let's get rid of this limit. Take the money away from teachers, cut teachers, and then put them into other programs, whether it be private schools, other schools, or other government programs.
Can we put money into private schools or specialized schools in these inner cities? I believe that we should be placing more money into those schools so that kids who have the passion and ability to move on in the education system can and will benefit from it more, while still working with all the other public schools or just common schools in the area to become equal across the board with schools that are much higher in suburban areas of the same state. To do this, I suggest that you take some of the funding out of these schools that are excelling, that are doing great in all of these suburban areas in these states, and move some of it into the cities so that those schools have more funding, they have more ability to move teachers around, get the teachers they need, get the supplies and the classrooms that they need, and then can boost their education to an equal level across the entire state, while still allowing some success during this period in these specialized schools.
So you're talking about specialized schools and creating this equality in a sense. But if you're talking about specialized schools where the children that do better in their other schools are going to get moved forward, that's not necessarily equal. That's some may say that that's racism in itself. So I propose something different. I propose talking about trade schools. I think that the money that we waste so much money as a government. If you look at the incarceration system right now, there's 2.4 million individuals incarcerated in prison, and there's $50,000 to $60,000 per person. Now that amounts to $63.4 billion. Imagine if we didn't have these prisoners. Not that I'm saying we should let these prisoners run free. Not just hypothetically. $60,000 is a teacher's salary, an average teacher's salary. You could either have 2.4 million more teachers or put that money into an economy. What I'm saying is you need to rebuild the economy. Put money into areas such as new partners for community revitalization, into the brownfields, into the struggling districts. You need to build up these areas and the economy so that these people can have jobs. When you build up the economy, you're actually creating a more attractive area for outsiders, and that would cause more diversity if that's the issue we're talking about, if we're talking about diversity. But what I'm proposing is to actually create trade schools. Now, we have a negative connotation of trade schools. It's something bad, something that, may be racist in a sense because you're not giving people the opportunity to go to the best schools, the best colleges. But in effect, when we're talking about the kids who are struggling to get food on the table, who are getting beaten, who are so impoverished, we need to sacrifice something. So these trade schools will give them a job when they get out so that they can rebuild this economy, revitalize it, and it's sort of a transitionary period where they'll have more time, more money, and it'll make a better education system.
But what if these trade schools just keep them stuck in the same jobs that they're already in? I believe that these trade schools aren't going to be successful because students won't be able to move up, like you said, into many colleges and things like that because they're not taking any of the core curriculum classes that they need to be taking, that these colleges look at, that they study. There's no way for them to move up in society if they're not getting many influential jobs, if they're staying in the negative connotation of it, the trade jobs.
Well, hold on there for one moment. We're talking about the core curriculum. You're saying if they don't get their core curriculum. The core curriculum in the schools is what I think the problem is. I think we're focusing on impractical study. Yes, it's important to know about your country's history. It's important to know about science. But we need to focus on the practical things so that in the real life, they can go out and do something.
Well, we can only do that if we reform the college process, and I don't believe that is happening soon enough. I think that we need to attack directly the schools themselves. I think that you can boost the economy by boosting education first. If you increase the specialized schools and allow these few individuals that really have this passion and the intelligence to be moving up in life, they can gain these jobs. They can gain many influential jobs. You have the alumni resources where people are donating more into inner cities where they grew up to increase education. And then they can go on to all of these influential jobs, and through that, like I said, in those common public schools, will be equalizing because they're getting money from other schools and they're boosting their standards essentially and teaching. You'll create a well-educated city, which will then automatically become well-to-do economically.
Okay, well, I don't disagree with this well-educated city. And I know you're alluding to the No Child Left Behind, getting rid of that whole area, the 1965 Elementary and Secondary Act that caused people to, this equal, fair playing ground that you were alluding to. I don't disagree with that, but I don't think that specialized schools are actually going to do that. If you look at the Israeli system of education, in Israel there are several different types of schools. Now, a lot of these schools that actually for the higher socioeconomic individuals are trade schools. So people are going for tech jobs, and about 2/3 of these schools are they're supplying the labor force right out of these schools, these vocational and secondary education schools. So what I think is we need to look at a system like that a little more. Maybe potentially integrate specialized schools with that as an option. But I think that we need to have this practicality of trade schools, where 1/3 of the curriculum at the end of the year is actually what we consider a core curriculum in the United States: the English, the arts, the sciences, where we talk about that broad liberal arts education. But I think we need to focus on what's practical, because in this idea of what's practical, students are going to learn when they're most interested. Students are going to learn when they can relate and when they feel that it's going to help them later in life. And in areas where they're struggling, where there's many other problems that we can't comprehend, I think that focusing on a trade, focusing on a job that is going to progress them further, they're going to be more receptive to that.
But no trade school is going to create a doctor, a lawyer in America, maybe in Iraq, but in our country, it's just not possible to achieve these great jobs, these jobs that everybody seems to strive for with just a trade school. You need more than that. I agree that the school days should be split up. I think that these specialized schools, which many of them are in New York, have a structure where you have a longer day and a longer year entirely, so that kids are pulled off the street as well, so that they have more safety in their day. They have a place to go, even if they're in these horrible circumstances, instead of just sticking to some trade that, like I said, will just make them stuck in the same job. It's like China. It's like telling them that they're going to be on this path. This is the job that you're going to take, and that's all that you can do. That's all.
Well, I'm talking about a transitionary period. Now, I don't think that this would be last forever, but I'm talking about something that could, last for the meantime. We spend so much more money. We waste money. I believe the federal government, $118 million could have been saved through the Job Corps, through oversights. Money saved through unemployment checks that were sent to the wrong people. Millions. This amounts to about $15.3 billion, I think it was reported. Yeah, it was reported just recently. The numbers just came out. $15.3 billion. That's enough for a transitionary period, for these economies to be revitalized, for the schools to become more attractive, better working, and you have trade schools in between. We need to loosen that that negative connotation, whether or not we go about this path, whether or not we go specialized schools, trade schools, we may be able to incorporate the two, but I'm getting the sign that we have to get off right now. But I think we've had a good discussion here, and I think we're on a better path for the future. So you guys can make your own opinions, and we'll be here to talk after. Thank you very much.